Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us for the 2024 surveyor planning meeting for the Elegant Trogon surveys of Santa Rita Mountains and the Patagonia Mountains. We do 5 surveys every year for Elegant Trogons over 3 weekends. So we hit 5 different mountain ranges, and these are going to be surveys number 2 and 3 of those 5. We did the Extosas last weekend, and that's an area west of Nogales. So this weekend, on the Saturday, we'll be doing the Patagonia Mountains, which is a really underrated birding area and has quite a lot of Trogons. Like we usually get nearly as many as the Santa Ritas, and some years as many as the Santa Ritas. It's a really underrated gem of habitat. It's not as developed for recreation as the Santa Rita, so it's not as well known to people. It doesn't really have signed trails or anything like that. So it's a little more wild out there, but the Trogons like it. They're out there, especially in good years where we've had enough rainfall. So we'll see how it goes this year. It's interesting to track that year to year for sure. We have been doing these surveys since 2013. So we are going on our 11th year of doing these surveys. And I always sort of say 2014 because our first year we sort of didn't have our legs under us entirely. So this is going to be sort of our 10th, I'd say, competent year of coordinating anyway, competent in terms of coordinating the surveys for these 5 mountain ranges. So we're getting quite a good data set that we share with our partners, Arizona Game and Fish. So I was very keenly interested in this data. This is a survey that we do as part of our Important Bird Areas program work. So this is a flagship project of the Arizona Important Bird Areas program, which is generously funded by Arizona Game and Fish. We also share all this data with the Coronado National Forest, since nearly all of our routes are on the Coronado, not all of them, but nearly all of them, that they're very interested in this data and information. So we do share this with all the partners. And now that we're onto our sort of 10-year plus data set, this is becoming quite a significant tracking of Trogons over time. And we've had some interesting dips and peaks and valleys in the data that you can really pretty clearly tie to rainfall. So it's going to be really interesting to continue these surveys in the future and with an even larger data set. All right, so I do want to share my screen and talk about the logistics of these 2 surveys, the Patagonia Mountain Survey and the Santa Rita Mountain Survey first. And let me go ahead and share my screen. Screen 2. Share sound is going to be important. Okay. So to do the logistics planning for yourself, there are a few people I have teamed, like most of you who signed up for these 2 surveys, either indicated you wanted to survey alone or came sort of with your own team, usually like a duo. And I've kept all those people that were obviously signed up together, that meant to survey together for these surveys. I had a few people though that requested being assigned a partner. I have gone ahead and done that for those, and everyone I've done that for, I have already contacted with a group email to connect those people. So if you see on the sheet that you've been assigned to somebody you don't know, and you haven't got an email from me that connects you with them, let me know, and we'll take care of that immediately. But I do believe I did get everyone assigned to anyone who wanted a partner, which wasn't that many this year, but did go ahead and make those groups and partnerships. So, and you should have already got an email connecting you all. But okay, so everything that we need for our surveys is here on the Arizona Important Bird Areas website. This may look very familiar to you, as I did send links on all this stuff in those info planning emails that I've sent a few days ago. I had an initial one, and then earlier this morning, I did send the final sort of planning email that had these links as well as the document where I put team assignments. All right, so you go to aziba.org, and that's our main hub of the Arizona IBA program. And the reason it's not just the Tucson Audubon website is because the Arizona IBA program is actually 2 Audubons. So it's Tucson Audubon and Audubon Southwest. We co-run this statewide program along with Arizona Game and Fish as our fiscal sponsor. And that is why we have a website that we can both interface with. Okay, so Tucson Audubon and Audubon Southwest. Okay, so from this main page, we're going to go to survey resources. It's a major tab here at the top. And it does have pages about all the different bird surveys we do over various years. And if you keep going down, there's the Elegant Trogon one. Click on that, and this goes to Elegant Trogon sort of central for the surveys that we do every year. And it has a little bit of an intro about the Trogons. It has this year's dates and the links to sign up, which you've obviously already seen since you have signed up. And then it has a nice thing about Trogons themselves, which we'll talk about after we talk about our logistics. But further down, it has logistics stuff for each of the 5 surveys. So I have made a separate page for each of these surveys. I did this a few years ago, and I think that's a good way to organize it. So for Saturday, in Patagonia Mountains, we click on this, and this is the one we're doing first this weekend. And I have a PDF here of protocol and instructions that you can download. It's very helpful. Talks a lot about a lot of the things I'm going to be saying are in this document as well. Has a data form, which I'll show you in a moment. Has, oh, that's going to be old. I need to change that. So that's the problem when you do these pages, you have to update them every single year. Okay, this list is numbered. I think this is last year's list. So I'll show you the current list. The one I emailed out is the correct one. And then enter your results in the survey. We'll talk about that too. And then I have the video from 2 years ago here. Once I get this video now uploaded onto YouTube, I'll email it to everybody, but I'll also post it here. This is the video from 2 years ago, which is also still pretty informational. And then a map of the routes. Okay, so the protocol PDF talks about the fact that the survey should start at 6 a.m., as close to 6 a.m. as possible. If it is a little later than 6 a.m., that is not a problem. I mean, it's not a huge problem. I do think it's good to start as close to 6 a.m. as possible, since it does get hot out there. And the Trogons are most vocal and most active earlier in the morning, like most birds. So it just talks about the methodology and some data collection and safety. Safety is a big thing for me. If it's getting too hot and you guys are out there and you feel like it's 9:30 and you're like, oh, it's so hot, we're done, get out of there. The maximum I want anybody out there to is 11. You do not need to stay to 11. I know I put this in that info email, but I want to reiterate it, that safety is the #1 priority. And if something looks too steep, or that looks too rocky, or you saw a rattlesnake or whatever, or especially if it's too hot, please just, your safety is the #1 priority. It's more important than collecting any data. Okay. So safety is #1 priority. And this thing, let's talk about safety stuff, but this is sort of a general overview of the protocol. But so one of the most important things I want to talk about right now is the data form. So you can go ahead and print this data form and take it with you in the field. If you don't have access to a printer, it's a pretty simple what it's asking for. So you could just sort of put this information in a notebook and then just fill it in the field, you know, or like a blank piece of paper, that would work fine. But the most important things you need to document when you're out there doing your trail. So how the Patagonia ones work is these are all just sort of travel surveys. You're spending the time from 6 a.m. to either 10 or 11, or even early as 9:30 if it's getting real hot. Just sort of that morning time you're spending moving through your assigned area. Not too fast, because you want to give the Trogons time to call and that you can detect them. These are not, sometimes they are. They're usually not the most in-your-face birds. I don't have any set protocol on using playback and how frequently. You are encouraged and welcome to use playback. And what I mean by that is playing the male call of elegant Trogon. The ones on the Sibley app are good, or the Merlin app. Is playing some Trogon sounds, which in May can really sort of goad them into responding back, and that can really help you, listen for them. Now, I do need to note that while this is totally permissible in the Patagonias and much of the Sanitas, inside of Madera Canyon itself, callback is prohibited by the Forest Service. Okay, so we can't be doing it in there, and it is because they have a lot of reasons for that. But for me, a really important one is that there are so many birders in Madera Canyon that if you start playing a Trogon, you're going to get a stampede of people rushing at you thinking you're a Trogon. So we definitely don't want to be doing it in the Madera Canyon. It is prohibited, but it's also, I feel like, bordering on rude almost, because there's so many birders in there. So outside of Madera Canyon, we are able, and I encourage using playback, because it does help you not miss Trogons, especially males, because they will often respond if they hear. Later in the summer, it gets trickier, they get more quiet. But in May, using playback should get them to respond. Okay, so what I need you to document if you find Trogons when you're doing your route in the Patagonias is I need your name, territory, the date, phone and email. I mean, you know that, right? The phone. So you put that in the online form when you submit your data. And then anytime you're detecting Trogons, you're going to want to record the time that you have them, the sex and number of Trogons. Like sometimes you get something like 2 males calling at each other, or a pair, or just a female by yourself, whatever it is. For every instance, every occurrence of Trogons, I need the number and sex. And then I do need coordinates. So if you, there's a lot of different ways to do coordinates. I did send out a link on sort of GPS aspect of how to do IBA work, but there's a lot of free phone apps that will do it. It can be decimal degrees, which is kind of the most common. That's what like Google Maps uses, and a lot of the apps will use decimal degrees. That's totally fine. Or you can use UTMs, which is just like sort of the metric version of decimal degrees coordinates. In a last-ditch effort, you can use sort of like a landmark. Oh, half a mile from my start. That is sort of the least preferable. But if that's all that, because something's happening, your phone's not getting signal, whatever, that will work as well. But coordinates are definitely best because we do take all these results and we put them onto a map. And that's what we share with you guys, the volunteers, and with our partners as well. And it also helps us look at the map and make sure we're not double counting. Because these Trogons sometimes start roaming up and down the canyon. That's another reason we record times that we detect them. Because if they go up and down the canyons, well, sometimes you got a male that's unpaired and just roaming up and down the Derrick Canyon, and everyone's hearing him. Mapping it out helps us look for those issues and make sure we're not overcounting. And then I have a notes thing here. So if they're doing anything, if you see them in a nest hole, if you see them fighting, if you see them courting each other, whatever, just sitting there calling at you, we need to make sure you note any behavior as well. And then on the back, we have this checklist of page 2. We have this checklist of common birds. You're welcome to use this. You can also just do an eBird list. We developed these forms before eBird was so popular as it is now. The service, I've been doing it for over 10 years, but Rick Taylor, who initially started them, has been doing them since like the 80s periodically. So the checklist thing may be a little out of fashion, but we do have it if you would like to use it, or just do an eBird list. And I did put in the email directions that you're going to share that eBird list to our AZ IBA survey username, and those will then come straight to the IBA program. So you can just do an eBird checklist and not worry about this if you'd like. Or you can just focus on the Trogons entirely and not worry about the other birds. That is also an option if you would like to do that. I think doing a checklist of all the other bird species adds a lot of nice information, but you certainly don't have to. Okay, so before I move on to the map, I do want to just quickly just cover Sanitas because it's very similar. So for the Santa Rita Mountains page, it's going to look real similar. It's got, again, I'll update the video link. It's got a results link here, but it also has the protocol, which looks really similar. And then I have 2 data forms here. Now, anyone who's helped with the Santa Ritas in past years knows that last year we tried sort of a major update of the protocol. I did put this in the info email, but I just want to cover it briefly. How the Santa Ritas always has worked over many years in the past, and this was influenced by when Rick Taylor was coordinating the count, that he sort of gave everyone a section and then it had a midpoint, and he wanted people to stay at that midpoint for 3 hours and then record Trogons up and down the canyon. So that gets a little tedious sitting there for 3 hours. So we have changed the protocol so that you do not need to stay at that exact midpoint for 3 hours, but I would like people to sort of work their way up their route, not too quickly, maybe sort of go maybe like, a 1/6 of the way up, or areas that look good, a good habitat, or just sort of space your way up, hang out for a little while. If it's really birdy, and also just staying still can really help you detect just a lot more species, but also more Trogons, because they do not call consistently. They sort of do it periodically. So if you hang out at this area for say half an hour, like, okay, nothing's going on, and you go up a little further, but there's like a ton of bird activity, you stay there for like an hour, great. Keep going, maybe go a little further up and nothing's going on. You're like, okay, maybe you only stay 10 minutes. It's like totally silent. Okay, we'll go a little further, and then you get towards the middle, and then you just hang out for whatever. Use your best judgment on how much time you spend working your way up. But I do think it's important not to just rush through your route. So spend, the first 3 hours from about 6 to 9 or 6 to 8, moving your way up the canyon. So periodically stopping and listening intently. And if you're not in the middle of the canyon, doing something with that. And then after 9, though, you can go up and down your route as many times as you want. If you thought you heard something and you want to revisit, or there was a cool bird back there or whatever, you can sort of go up and down your route. And you really want to sort of stay out of other people's routes during the survey period. Now, many of these surveys involve not so much the Patagonias, but in the Santa Ritas, moving through someone else's territory to get to yours. Some of the routes work that way, especially on the trails. So let's say your upper, Carrie Nation Trail, and you got to go through the lower and mid section to get up to yours. You want to sort of blast through other people's territories as quick as you can and get up to yours and spend a lot of time slowly moving through your own territory. If you do detect Trogons moving through someone else's territory to get to yours, please do note them. Just take a quick coordinate and a time, and that helps us add to the picture of what's going on. If you do sort of just detect them as you're moving through. I'll always go with on the map, for the map anyway, the setting or the data point of the person who was assigned that route. But sometimes, I mean, they can move around quite a lot, and sometimes they go up side canyons. So sometimes the person who went through first gets them, and the person who's there all morning doesn't. It doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen sometimes. So please do keep track of just sort of any Trogons you get throughout the day. And let's see here. So we will be using pretty much, I think, this hiking data form rather than that stationary one. The hiking one, I think, is a lot more straightforward. It's more clear. Even if you're doing one of these Madera Canyon routes where they're packed in pretty tight, and it looks the same as the Patagonia one, it is the one where you are just recording the time, the section number of Trogons, the coordinates, and just any behavior notes or any notes. Oh, it was in a sycamore tree, whatever. Any notes that seem relevant to you, go ahead and record those. Yeah, so the stationary data form, which let me show you what it looks like. You certainly can use it if you already have one printed out from last year or something, you can. But it is, can you admit, oh, I see, okay, sorry, I didn't know the bar. Okay, admitting someone. You can do it. So this is the difference. This is sort of an older school, and we're still going to use this for Chiricahuas, but it has this time. So what it was meant for is if you're stationary in the center and you're like, oh, I hear the Trogon from 6 to 7 calling consistently, you could like do a line down the whole row. Because we're going to be moving through, we're going to be switching to the other data form, which is the hiking one. Okay, so I think it's a little more straightforward. You can print this out, or you can just do it in a notebook, and that's totally fine because you're going to be doing your own data entry through our online survey. So I have the correct link on this one. Okay, so you've done your survey. I do ask that everyone really make safety number one priority. I also want everyone, I put this in the email with my phone number. So I do want everyone to text me or call me or email me when you are out of your route and safely back to your car and back in phone signal. And it doesn't have to be like by a certain time, specifically, but just sort of by early afternoon, because if you're having a really great morning out on your route and you're getting lots of cool birds and you've already wrapped up the Trogon survey, I don't want people rushing out to go text me, but sort of by mid-afternoon, I would like to hear from everyone if possible that you're safe. I do cross you all off on my little checklist to make sure everyone's safe. I feel great responsibility with that. So please do let me know that you're out safely and that you're all good. And then it doesn't have to be the same day by any means, but then later you are going to enter your data. And it's really important you write it down when you're out there, but then you're going to enter your data on our online here. This little survey, which is already, I'll send a follow-up email to everyone reminding you, but this is a little data entry thing, and you just fill it out with your name and information and all that, which Trogon survey it was, and who was with you. This is a great way. I also use this to capture volunteer hours, which is why I ask these questions. That's how far you drove and stuff, because this really helps my game and fish grant reporting of all your effort, which really helps justify our big grant we get from them every year. So please do fill this out, and then how many total Trogons did you have? And if you think you heard the same one twice and you put it on your data form, that's a great thing for the notes. So like, I think this is the same one I had at 8 a.m. or whatever. Okay, so I'm asking for a total number, and this is your best judgment. Even though you may have heard Trogon 6 times, you think it's maybe 2 that were moving around or whatever. I asked for a total number here, and then any sort of general survey comments. This could be something like tons of butterflies everywhere, or just anything, or there was tons of birders in the canyon, or I didn't see anyone else all day, or the creek was flowing really high, or something like that. And then the reason I asked this again, if you have any Trogons, yes or no, is because this then prompts this form to lead you to the next page if you did have Trogons. So if you say no, then it's just like, okay, thank you, and it doesn't waste any more of your time. But if you say yes, it opens to another page. I have to do these requested or these fruits. So let me show you. Okay. Then you go to next. Okay. So if you say yes, it brings you to this next page where it then asks you for information about the first Trogon you want to report. Okay. So it's like, okay, my first on my list of the 3 Trogons I have, here's my first one. And you just answer information. Was it a pair? Was it a male? Was it a female, etc. The time, this is where you put those coordinates. Yeah, and I put a second coordinate one because sometimes people are like, it was here and then it went to this location. So then you can put coordinates twice if something like that happened. Any notes? And then do you have another Trogon? And if you're done, if you just have the one, you just say no and it wraps up. If you have another one to report though, you hit yes and it takes you to another page. I think this is really, we fine-tuned this over the last couple of years and it works really well. And boy, let me tell you, when we're doing our analysis, over the 5 servers, we have over 100 people who help with these. So I get over 100 data entries, and the big spreadsheet that generates from this with everyone's help inputting really is pretty cool to see the whole thing. And it really helps us do our data validation and mapping it out. So I appreciate your help with doing this online data entry through our little portal here, but it works really well. So I will remind everyone after the survey and send that data link. Does anyone have any questions right now about these general logistics? And then we'll talk about the maps of each of these 2 mountain ranges. All right, because I've really tried to make this as straightforward as I can over the years. I've fine-honed it, so hopefully it is pretty straightforward. Okay. So for Saturday, for the Patagonias, I do have fewer routes in the Patagonias than in the Santa Ritas, and a lot of that is just development of access development. Okay, so as anyone who's doing this survey on Saturday knows, I did send out an info email pretty earlier this morning that did talk about the fact that we will be meeting. Now, people who know this area well, who have done the survey before, who know the Patagonias well, go ahead and just head to your section if you would like to. But for those who do not know the Patagonias well, I would suggest taking advantage of joining our caravan. So how I do that is we meet outside of Gathering Grounds. It's that little, really popular among birders cafe in the town of Patagonia. They will not be open. So, but it's just a really convenient meeting place because then the road continues into the Patagonia Mountains. They will not be open because we're there a little too early because we're meeting there at 5:45. But they certainly will be open after the survey if you want to go there. But there are restrooms in the park, right where you turn to go to Patton Center, the sort of south end of the Patagonia Park there. There are restrooms that are almost always open, public restrooms, and they're like flushing toilets. So if you need a restroom break when you drive in, go ahead and take advantage of that. But Gathering Grounds will not be open. We're going to meet outside of Gathering Grounds. And then anyone who wants to will just follow me and we will drive to the Patagonia Mountains together. And down this main road is Harshaw Road. There is a team that's starting on this route here. So I will then leave that team there. And then we're going to keep going. And the caravan follows. We're going to keep going down the main road here. I know this map shows a lot of roads because I got this layer from the Forest Service, but this is the main road here, Harshaw Road. Goes down Harshaw Road. And then 2 teams start here. So I'll get those folks oriented. Like, this is your start point, And I know that this map shows a lot of little roads, but there's really only one main road. And it's really obvious when you see it. So then you do your survey. And then when you're done, you just turn around and go back the way we came. And it takes you right back to the town of Patagonia. So I'll leave, these teams here. Take everyone to their start point. And I do one of the furthest south ones. So that's why I can drop everyone off and then go and do mine. So this is that road route. Get this team started. It's a pretty good place to park right here. This is that Harshaw Road, Route 1. Get this, although Robin knows where he's going. So this Robin will probably already be here. If the team does Blue Nose, put him here. Endless Chain, I'll get this team started here. And then, and I know where all these locations are visually, as well as I'll have a GPS. So then the Harshaw Road team 2 starts here, and I'll get them started and keep going. And all these routes are very likely to have Trogons. We have had them relatively consistently, not every year on every route, but these are sort of the best routes. And then flying our ranch, I'll get this team, if they need it, get this team got their start point, and then keep going. And then mine's down here is Finley and Adams. So I'm sort of one of the furthest south routes. So I can then just get everyone oriented. And then when you're done, you just let it go all the way back. I forgot to open my document. Did anyone on the Patagonia Mountains crew here not get the document on what team, like what route they're doing? And does anybody have any questions on that? I want to show it on the video with your guys' names. But anyway, I did send that doc. It's a view-only Google Doc of all the routes and then assigned people's names to those routes. So if anyone has any questions about that, you can ask now or text or call me or email me later. And it's part really that we're doing this on Thursday, so we can sort of have all of tomorrow to answer people's, if anyone has a specific question and wants to call me or text me, we can certainly do that. Okay, so that's the Patagonias. It is really good habitat, and people don't think of the Patagonias as good for Trogons, but it really is. And some of the best, I think, most accessible Trogons, if you have a family member or someone who can't hike up a trail and wants to see a Trogon, this Harshaw Road, literally here, this road, some of the routes are right on the dirt road there because it is excellent habitat. It's right along Harshaw Creek, and you get Trogons right in here. And I think it's honestly one of the most accessible places to see Trogons. And they are also up these side drainages, which are less accessible. You have to scramble up old dirt roads, but a little bit more steep in here, but still has Trogons. So the Patagonias are good. And even though there's hardly any sycamores in there, there's lots of big oaks, there's lots of big pines in certain areas, and you get flicker woodpecker holes in there, and the Trogons do nest in them. So it's actually quite a good area for Trogons. It's just not the one people think of first. So that transitions into the area that people do think of first for elegant Trogons, which is the Sanitas. And I did pull up the current eBird map of what's going on. And boy, look at all that red in the Sanitas. So the red dots are Trogons seen in the last 30 days. So the Sanitas are getting a lot of Trogon hits, just by birders in general on eBird. Now the Patagonias have some in eBird. Patagonias do have some, but not nearly as many. And a lot of that is because the Patagonias don't get birded nearly as much. So maybe we'll put a bunch of red dots on there for our survey. But Sanitas are getting a lot. And how the Sanitas work generally is a map. So I do have this nice map I've made. I have a few of my routes that are not in Madera Canyon. So we do, of course, always Cave Canyon on the east side of the Sanitas and Gardner Canyon, both of which usually have Trogons. Very good area. And then I sometimes get help with things like Agua Caliente Canyon, which I did assign someone this year. So I don't have Teresa's on this meeting. I don't think so. I want to talk to Teresa later about that, make sure that that's okay. But by far, the crown jewel of the Santa Rita Mountains is Madera Canyon. And that is where most of us will be. I will be at Madera Canyon on Sunday. Most people do Madera Canyon. So these routes are pretty over time. We sort of honed them again, and I think they're pretty well sorted out. But I did share that document with everyone helping with this survey that shows all the routes and your names with them, associated with them. I did try to accommodate everyone as much as I could in terms of requested routes and requested sort of types of routes. And if there is an issue, though, let me know, because I do have a couple of open. I could move people around a little bit if needed. The Madera Canyon is pretty full. I have most of it assigned, but if there's an issue, let me know and we'll try to work it out. But so I have some routes that follow sort of the main road. Now, you don't have to do the main road. Let's say, like I know I have a team doing the Santa Rita Lodge route, as we call it, this orange one here. Okay, so this is the Santa Rita Lodge route. We do mention the midpoint because of the old method of doing it, but that also just gives you a sense of what's on your route too. You don't have to spend all that time there, but definitely hit that midpoint, but move your way throughout those first hours of the morning. And there is the main road here, but there's also the nature trail that goes off the main road, sort of the other side of the creek. And you can definitely do your route that way, or go up one way and come back the trail, or something like that. Or do the trail first and then spend some time hanging out, on the paved road. Whatever works best for you. But if it's better for your mobility or abilities to just stick to the paved road, that's also totally fine. Now, I happen to know this team is planning on doing the nature trail on the other side of the creek. And that's fine. Whatever works best for you. You do not have to stay right on this line. Okay, just so you know. The endpoints are pretty set. In other words, you're going to be going to someone else's territory. But you can get on the trail, you can do the paved road, whatever works best for you. So I do have a team doing Chuparosa. And boy, the best way to do Chuparosa, because the trail kind of ends, is to be kind of on that main road. Be very careful of cars on Madera Canyon. It will be pretty early on Sunday morning, so we shouldn't have too much traffic, but you start to get more as you get later in the morning. So definitely be careful because it is going to be a weekend. And then many of our routes in Madera Canyon are also trails, traditional trails. So like the team that does Bog Spring Trail can come through this dirt road here on the turnoff for the Kent Springs house, then get to this trail intersection and then take their route. Again, if you're moving through someone else's area to get to your area, because if you're moving through a territory that's assigned to someone else, blast through, but also note any Trogons that you do detect, because it does help. Because you might get to their endpoint long before, like the team assigned to the Kent Springs cabin route, maybe hanging out the first hour of this first section, but you're blasting through and you get a Trogon towards the end. That's going to be very helpful to us trying to figure out our total number of Trogons in the Madera Canyon. So don't be upset if you see someone moving through your route and they're doing the Trogons. They're just on their way to somewhere else, okay, to spend their morning in a different section. Most of our routes that end up at springs, if you can get to the spring, I would suggest you try. Now, if you're feeling like you can't, definitely don't push. But if the Trogons are anywhere on these routes, they tend to be towards those springs, and other birds too. But if you do have the hiking ability, and I tended to only put people that said they were strong hikers on these sections, on these routes. Okay. So then I have some going from these trails further down, and then we have, of course, the traditional routes going up from Carrie Nation, the famous route, the famous trail for Trogons. I have 3 sections in here. So a lower, middle, and an upper Josephine Canyon or Carrie Nation. This is also known as trail. 2 teams on the super trail moving up. Okay, let's see here. So does anybody have any questions about where they're going? Who's doing the Santa Rita survey? Where they're going on Sunday? Okay. You guys are just super competent, and I really mean that. You guys, I think this is a really good crew for these surveys. We do have a few new people though, which I love. I love putting some new people on these surveys every year because it helps build our base of experienced surveyors. But many of you are experienced in these surveys and done them before. But yeah, any newbies especially, if you do have questions, please give me a call this evening or tomorrow, and we'll talk through anything that you'd like to talk through. Okay. So I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about Trogons themselves. Everyone's favorite bird, the star of the show, elegant Trogons. They are very, very cool birds. They are extremely restricted to Southeast Arizona within the United States. They are pretty darn widespread through good habitat of West Mexico. They are very much a sky island sort of mountain bird. And probably because they're so adaptable and widespread is why they are the one Trogon species that has made it up into the United States and breeds regularly in the lower 48 states. Our survey covers probably over 90% of all the breeding elegant Trogons in the United States, if not more. There's only a few that I think we miss, like the ones that are in the remote areas, the Galleros, that kind of thing. But between our 5 mountain ranges that we survey, we get pretty much most of the entire breeding population that occurs within the U.S., which is part of the reason this is a very high priority for Arizona IBA, as well as Game and Fish, since they are the only steward in the United States of the habitat for elegant Trogons in the U.S. So they're really cool. And you look at this bird, look at this male, and you're like, wow, there's no way I won't be able to see that bird sitting in a tree near me. And they can actually be surprisingly difficult to detect. They are very intelligent. They are really interesting, cool birds from the tropics. They do look different from anything else up here. But they're also, I feel like Trogons are very aware that the males are bright red. And when they don't want to be seen, they'll turn and point that green back to you, and they can blend in actually really surprisingly well. The female has a brown back and can hide pretty well, pretty effectively. Here's a nice range map showing that they are through West Mexico and parts of Central America, although this is a different subspecies in Central America. And then the only place they come up in the U.S. to breed in the summer is Southeast Arizona and in the Sky Islands pretty exclusively. So we're very lucky to be here in Southern Arizona where they are. But let's just go through some of their information real quick here. So they are very beautiful. They don't sound all that beautiful though, to be honest. And they have this really distinctive way of sitting, of holding themselves, that I feel like is one of the most diagnostic things about them. They have almost like a parrot-like posture to me, where they have this little sort of hunchback thing going on, like this side-on photo of the male showing. They do kind of sit hunched a bit, and they have this really long tail, and their feet are like halfway up their body if you include their tail. So they have their little feet on a branch, and it's like half of the bird is below that branch. It's a very unusual posture. The way they sit with their tail almost always pointing down gives them this really sort of upright, at attention kind of posture, but also with a hunchback, sort of like slouching. It's a really interesting posture, and they almost always do it unless they've just landed or something, or they're really agitated, then they might lift their tail. But they usually sit kind of like this with their tail pointing down. Beautiful, fine barring on the tail. But this posture is pretty distinctive, which is why you see it in many photos. Here is a female. I do want to emphasize the female real quick, because she looks quite different from the male. She doesn't have the bright red on her belly. She's got this really warm, sort of buffy brown. Everywhere he's green, she's sort of gray or brown. She has little white teardrop mark coming down from her eye. It's a really beautiful white mark. If you see a Trogon that has some green on the head, but also has that teardrop mark, that's a young male. It's a juvenile male. But the adult females have that as well as the juvenile females. She has this rosy pink on her lower belly. It's reminds me a lot of a female vermilion compared to a male vermilion, where everywhere he's red, she's sort of gray or brown, and then she has that soft pink on the lower belly. Her tail on the underside is very similar to the males, but on the back, so here's a juvenile, but this is similar to what the female, oh, here we go, here's the back, a female with a back foot. So female has a brown back. Really nothing on her is iridescent except the tail. The back of the tail looks the same pretty much on the male and the female, where she had this beautiful coppery tail, which is why this subspecies is the coppery tail subspecies, is referring to the back of the tail. And I'm wanting to scroll up, and it's not doing what I want. It's doing something I don't want. Show me there we go. I want to see a male with the back of the tail. You see the male also has this coppery tail on the back, but a green back instead of brown like the female. So you see they almost always have this really upright posture. And then this is a juvenile. They have the white spots on the wing, and they also usually have a smaller, shorter tail than an adult. We may have juveniles on the survey. Some years we do. Some years people do see fledglings because some of them will nest early. We had so much winter rain that I am not sure what's going to happen. But if you see a small Trogon with white spots in the wings and like a weird shape where his tail looks a little short, that is a young one out of the nest. Just so you know, that's what's going on with that. If you do see something like that, this is obviously a young male because he's got some green coming in on his back. They are cavity nesters. So they like sycamore trees because sycamores will sometimes create natural cavities on their own with they do self-pruning where limbs fall off and create cavities. They're also very happy to use a woodpecker hole if it's suitable for them. So this is one looking at a woodpecker hole in a, looks like a sycamore tree or a woodpecker hole. Here's a beautiful photo of one just sitting. Now they have a good video on this I want to play real quick of, I'm going to go in for the pyracantha fruit. Trogons do eat a lot of fruit, but they primarily feed their young insects. So it's very important to them that they have a territory with a lot of large insects like juicy caterpillars or things like katydids, walking sticks. They have a lot of walking sticks. I don't even know how to find them all, but they sure do. Okay, so here's a video I want to play real quick of a Trogon, a male, very relaxed male, preening and calling. That someone got a good video of. We're going to talk about different calls in a moment. Different call. Okay, so it's not very loud because that's a more quiet call that they do sometimes. All right, so let's talk about calls real quick. So there is the one that is sort of the most associated with them, which is this song one, which is sort of an advertising male. You can almost think of it as like singing. It's a male either saying, I have this great territory. Come check it out, ladies. He's either saying that, or if he's already paired, he's saying, everyone else, stay out of my territory that me and my lady have. That's what that sounds like. Beautiful sound in the Sky Islands in May, right? So it is a bit barky. Some people describe it as a frog-like sound. I've heard chihuahua-like sound. It's very barky. The tone can change slightly. That's not the most attractive toned recording I've heard, but it's always usually about 5-ish calls and then a pause, quite a long pause, several second pause, and then he does it again. So it happens in these like phrases of and then waits. Sometimes they just do it, especially early in the morning when you're starting up your route. You might just hear them just calling for no reason, and they're just advertising. They're just communicating with each other. This is my territory, like any singing bird would. And this is the one, if you're going to try to goad them into calling back outside of Midair Canyon, that's certainly a good one to do. And if this is quite a loud call, it can carry pretty far. If you're standing still for a few minutes listening, this is one that can carry pretty far down the canyon. Now, they do this other call that is much more quiet, and I tend to think of it as far less aggressive in terms of when I see them doing it. I've seen pairs do this to each other. I've seen males that are on sort of good terms where they know where the territory boundary is and they're not infringing on each other's territory calling, and it's a much more quiet call. So if you hear this, the Trogon is probably a lot closer than you think, and this is what was happening in the video. It's far more of like, I don't know, like, it looks like a muttering call. They don't do it very loud. They do, you can hear it, but it doesn't carry down the canyon or anything. When they're doing that, it's more like cha 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 cha. And I think it's more of a communication call and less of an aggression call, or like an advertising call. It's just, I've heard males do it to females. Now, females do call, but I've hardly ever seen a recording of it because they don't do it very much, and they don't do it as predictably as a male. But if you do hear a Trogon call that sounds something like a full octave lower than any of these recordings, that is probably a female. They call in a much lower pitch than the males do, and they don't do it very much. But I have heard them do it. And sometimes in response to this call, he'll do like cha cha cha, and then she'll do an even deeper version back to him sometimes. So the females don't call a lot, but it is lower when they do. All right, now this last one I've heard called an alarm call, but I've heard them do it even when they're not alarmed. So I'm going to play it real quick, but this is the call I hear them do most often in the winter. So if you've encountered overwintering Trogons, which is relatively rare, but in some of the canyons around here, you do sometimes get Trogons hanging out for the winter. This is the call they tend to do. But they do it when they're alarmed. But let me just play this real quick. Okay. So I have heard them do that just sort of almost conversationally in the wintertime. I've never really heard them do it in the summer. They do the other calls. But they will do that call in the summer if they are alarmed. And when they are alarmed, it's that same call, but it sounds, I mean, not to anthropomorphize, but it sounds more alarmed. It's almost frantic. If you hear that in a frantic sort of tone, they are very upset, probably with you, and you need to back off because you could not realize that you're very close to a nest or a fledgling or something like that. If you hear that call, definitely back off and maybe sort of hide yourself behind some tree or some bushes or something and just try to assess what's going on. But you want to sort of back off immediately if you hear that in a really distressed kind of way, because you're probably near something pretty interesting like a nest, but you don't want to be stressing them out. So that's pretty cool if you hear that, but we don't get it that much. But if you get into these specific alarms, so we do call it, on the website I gave them names. So circling back to this main page here about the Trogons, I do talk about these 3 calls. I have samples of them here that are MP3 files that you can play, these sample files. And it's the clink call, which is that advertising male call. And these are terms that were developed by Rick years ago. The clink call is like, the really loud one. And then the cow call, which is like the cha-cha-cha-cha-cha. I've also sometimes called it the cha-cha call, but cow call is what Rick called it. And then the wiki-kiki is the alarm. These are audio examples that you can listen to or even download if you would like. If you right click, you can just save link as an MP3 and download it if you would like. These are open source from Xenocanta. You're allowed to download these and use these. And then I also have here a little document. So this is the link to that page I was just looking at that had all the photos of the Trogons. But this is a uploaded PDF, a PDF scan of a book that I uploaded into the website. And it's from this book here, Trogons of the Arizona Borderlands by Rick Taylor. This book is now out of print, so I have Rick's permission to scan the relevant pages and make them available to all of you. But it's a really cool, if you're interested in sort of the details of what's going on in Trogon like psychology, this is a really interesting read. It's just a few pages long, talking about Rick's time in the 70s. Spent a lot of time with Trogons learning their ways, kind of thing. And it's really interesting. And you can go through and read about the different calls and what Rick observed as to what they mean. So he goes into more calls than we are, but those three are the main you're going to encounter is the what I just called them. So you can look at that PDF if you'd like. If you're interested, it's there for you. But the coink call, the cow call, and the alarm call, or the wicca call. Let's see here. Yeah, and then if this is your first survey, I just want to double check that everyone, and I did put this in the email, and it's also in the confirmation sign-up email, but I do want to make sure everyone is aware of what they're getting into. This is a note I did about what's going on with the Trogon survey and what to expect. And I did a little video on, while doing a Trogon survey a few years ago, of what they entail and what they're all about. So I just want to make sure everyone knows what they're getting into. This is sort of an all morning, certainly out in the field commitment. I checked the weather and it's going to get pretty hot this weekend. The temperatures are going to go up. So I just want to reiterate again that if it's feeling too hot, especially in Patagonia, we're a little bit lower elevation. If it's like 9:30, you're like, ugh, it's getting too hot. I want to get out of here. That's totally fine. Okay, so please, your safety is my number one priority for everybody. I also, if you're interested, I do a page each year of the results from each year. So starting in 2017, I started doing that. So starting in 2017 to current, I do have a little page of the results for each survey. And let's see here. Is there anything else I wanted to cover? I think that's everything. Does anyone have any questions? Is there anything in the chat? I'm gonna stop sharing so I can see better. I can't really see very well when I have the share screen on. Nothing in the chat, Tanita? Oh, I do see a hand raised. Deborah, yes. Oh, let me unmute you. Can I unmute you myself? Oh, I can't hear you, Deborah. You're muted.
Sorry. Okay. Sorry. Okay. How's that?
Yes. Coming through loud.
Yeah. So we're some of your newbies, and I was just thinking maybe after you stop the recording, if I could either call you or if we could stay on and you could kind of just go over the route a little bit.
Sure.
Like
yeah, stay on. That'd be fine. Yeah, and then I'll stop recording in a minute. But yeah, go ahead, Laura.
I think it's just because I was late. I missed where do we see where our team or route is? I couldn't find that link.
Your team assignment, like your route assignment?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So the info email I sent out this morning had a link to a Google Doc, and that shows you that. Now, I'm gonna stop recording in a moment. Just stay on and show you.
Oh, I'm looking at the wrong email. That's why.
Okay, yeah, I sent another one out this morning that had the document. I still want to show everyone's names and stuff on it. Video that's gonna go on YouTube. Any other questions before I stop recording? Oh, baby. All right, so I'm gonna stop recording.